wandering into elites and aspiring people all over the world. I never expected that to happen in my life. This happened in Europe, the Middle East, Asia, Malaysia, South America, Central America, and then all over the United States. Major cities, in contrast to where I was brought up in the Ozarks in the Midwest, or in Southwest Missouri, to be more specific. An upbringing in the Ozark Mountains was very limiting, and I'd always wondered how all these basic rules, and I think what felt like limitations and sometimes oversimplified, maybe biases and prejudices that were being told to me as fact and kind of impressed upon me with some force that seemed like it had fear behind it. I'd always questioned whether those things would hold up in these other cultures and with other people around the world. And, I've been, had a lot of dealings here in the United States and all the major cities, New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Seattle, Austin, Dallas, Houston, New Orleans, Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Phoenix, Atlanta, Raleigh, Philadelphia. I'm trying to make the point that I've dealt with these different cultures that have produced, kind of their own bubbles in a way. And, as I went out into the world and spent months and over the course of several years, spent a lot of dedicated time studying the elites and the more common, maybe middle to upper class people who were aspiring for more control over their economic system, for their family, or for their own aspirations. And there was this, the reason I had this opportunity is I really got very bored with engineering, and I was really good at petroleum engineering and understood all the systems, and I was also a whiz with computers and data. And it's a highly, data and science-driven industry with lots of different niches, and I was able to span all those niches. And then also I related to people, and I found that my heart, my calling, was more about connecting with people. And so as I, left various positions, one day out of the blue, I was called to go do an engineering assignment in Bangkok, Thailand. I never expected to do anything like that. And suddenly, I find myself in a different environment, but going into a situation where I was well equipped with knowledge and background and experience, education, to understand how they were, the challenges they were facing in their oil business, and then being charged with communicating this to the people that were aspiring to operate these oil fields all over the world. And so I had a chance to have not only face to face with the elites that were at the top of the food chain, so to speak, in these various cultures, study them and understand the systems that they were putting in place, and then go to communicate directly with the people, or the masses, and try to help them transform themselves into the top of the business hierarchy, which was very much equated to their social standing. And it was fascinating to see how the psyche of these elites and these masses of people in each area were similar, and the differences that they had. The differences being more related to the cultures that they were coming from, and the structure of their thinking, the patterns and the values that they had, the prejudices and the biases that they were raised with. And I could see how differently each was wired, and kind of the order or sequence of their thinking, and how their values. And when you got face to face with not just one, but with a whole group, and then had a chance to pull off and speak with individuals directly, you could see how differently their bodies operated, and how sometimes they really wanted to communicate with you, and sometimes they were just walking through this for some other reason, and they weren't fully present. So, it was an interesting perspective, from my standpoint, to go to these different bubbles around the world, and to be able to, over time and with a lot of reflection, come back and see how there were differences, but there were a lot of commonality, between them at the human level. And you could also see the effects and the contrast of the conditioning that was present around the world. And you can also go into these different communities around the United States and see how different they are based on the conditioning and the values, the biases, and the perspective that is drilled into people's subconscious as they're brought up in these different bubbles. And then, of course, you encounter some people that, you may know some military brats that were raised in 5 different places during their early childhood. And you may see, how dramatically different that is from people that were just raised in one particular area, maybe their whole life, or maybe just their childhood before they were moved to another location. But that oil company aspect of my past, I really am very appreciative of that, because it really helped me. I had an aspiring Westerner mindset, and if you really look at how the world operates, there's this aspect of domination that is in every bubble, because the way that we've structured our life around this capitalist, mindset that is bent toward trying to dominate and aspire, and to, there's a hierarchy, and there's also, in some cases, a total lack of respect for how nature operates, because that's the ultimate dominator in life. And if the sun's shining, or if it's day or night, we all accept that as a fact. If it's raining or the sun is shining, we have no control over that, and it influences our life. And as we're learning today, climate is so huge, and we have enough history, and we've documented everything enough that we used to look at something like maybe 100 years ago as if if you're on this part of the planet, you should always expect the weather to be this one way. And now we're seeing that's really a kind of a ridiculous view because of the climate changes. And we're going through a period right now where it's really clear that there may be, an entirely different environment in one particular region of the earth in another 100 years that's far out of our control, and we may be able to predict it to some degree, but we have no certainty. And so I had this, ability to, or people saw in me that I was an aspiring person. I really understood the Western or this domination mindset. And, early in my career, one of my mentors showed me his secret book, that had his secret sauce in it, which was winning through intimidation. And I studied that. And I didn't use it in my intentionally in my life, but I did use it to defend myself in situations where I felt like people were using those intimidation tactics against me. So if you picked up on anything that I just said, you may feel a little bit confused, and that's okay, because there was a time in my life where I felt very confused by what I went out in the world and saw in these different cultures. They didn't jive with what I was brought up to believe in the Ozarks. So, I felt the contrast. But what I saw in common between all these things later surfaced, and there was this effort toward, control. And there was also a kind of an acceptance, or there was an inherent understanding that there was a hierarchy in each one of these bubbles. And there was also a aspect, especially of those at the top of the hierarchy, there was a wishfulness, a hope, or a demand that the masses conform. So there was an appreciation for, the fellow man, for the chaos, for the potential disharmony that lie in their revolt, against the hierarchy. So there was an effort to, and I was part of this effort because I was the one that was communicating and helping the aspirations of those in the middle or at the bottom, to rise, into more affluence and more success, more control. And so for better or for worse, that was part of what I was there to do, was to transform and educate and to help them conform into, operating at a higher level in the systems that were in place around their oil fields, which also involved, not just the I'm not talking about, like a plumber here or being a better plumber. I'm saying, oil fields were and are complex enough that it involves a complete set of mindset of problem solving and thinking and communicating and understanding what may or may not be important in certain circumstances to really optimize, your human potential to be able to, move to the top of this industry. And there was a lot of money in the industry, so there were a lot of, super smart and well-connected people that were, in the groups that I was working with. So it was a pretty challenging and competitive environment that these people and that I was in. So, you know, that time in my life when I was all over the world for long periods of time and had insights, into these different cultures, I've really longed to find a way to really mine that experience for something of value to others today, something of value to me today. And, I can see how part of my vibe here is to educate people about how to maximize your own potential in your own life and to see into your own conditioning, to have a chance to examine it and separate yourself from it so that you can make up your own mind as to what you're really aspiring to do yourself rather than what your conditioning is pointing you toward. And I see so many people getting tangled up with their conditioning and fighting it and revolting against it, which basically just pushes them away from their own humanity. And it also makes you very, very easy prey for the manipulators out there who are using the triggers that they can operate through media and through various social mechanisms to basically alienate you from your own humanity, from your own uniqueness and your own choice in your life as to how you operate, how you feel, and what you choose. So there's some powerful things that I learned about from these different cultures around the world is that it really has a lot to do with perspective and identity. And some of it is even rooted in sexuality and actually just physicality, because men and women do have some dramatic differences between the way their bodies operate, regardless of what bubble they're in and what the conditioning was. But every bit of conditioning in that early environment usually assigns some pretty hardcore identities and roles that kind of underlie the behaviors and the way that they really kind of piece together how life works. And those are the building blocks that you end up getting into as you escape or learn to live with and move out of the trauma gaps that may have been created in your life that give you the opportunity to have the insight to move forward into and transcend all of that. So you will also see these different cultures and places around the world using religion to create this is the right thing to do. And there's a niceness and a politeness around some behaviors that are really ultimately not serving you. And of course, every guru, or not every, but there's a lot of them, use this to, basically take advantage of people, take their money, use them for sex, and get them to basically become robots for their pleasure. And but the sad truth is that the righteousness and the sexuality are often used to manipulate and control. And those aspects of life around the world, have been manipulated and misused for hundreds, if not thousands, of years. So I think there's some positives in how they're utilized to minimize chaos and to promote values that I think are healthy and promote more safety. But they can also be something that if if you're not having the freedom to discuss and feel and be open with others about these things, then you're probably limited as to how far you can really, really get free of some of that conditioning that has some of those ideas about men and women, and also not just the ideas about their potential in the world. And I'm not talking about performing as maybe the first president or the first this or that, or being a good plumber or being a good executive, but I'm talking about those gender roles that really do have to do with the physicality, because I mean at its root level, women's bodies are much more creative in a different way of being able to host and carry and bring forth a new life into the world. And men they don't have that type of connection to the earth and nature, and are much more dependent upon relating to each other. And it's really funny because a lot of men are really weak at relationships versus women who are more nurturing and have always had this natural connection with other women. But you put people in the workplace, which is its own bubble, and you find women having trouble connecting with each other commonly, and then you'll find men much more, they know how to conform kind of in the battlefield a lot better. And I'm speaking now of where we are as a kind of where we've evolved to as mankind. And that may have not been as true a few years ago, or it may not be as true today as it was a few. So I just contradicted myself there, but I'm interested to know what you think, and if you even followed along this far into my this this feeling that I had that I needed to talk about this and share this with people. So I hope this helps someone get more free, get more comfortable with yourself, accepts more things about yourself, and also understand how big the world is and how many different bubbles there are in the world, and how I think it's very beneficial to explore all of those to be the best at whatever you choose to be. All the best.